Hey guys, this is Mike from Deepwood Force of Will, coming at you guys with another video, another one of our little discussion topics. I know you guys have started liking this format that we're doing here, where it's just kind of like slide by slide, piece by piece, so I want to make sure we stick to that for a little bit until you guys get sick of it. Today's topic, though, is a little bit different. I know just the other day we put out a video on the Wanderer format, as well as testing for Wanderer and the upcoming GP. And I'd like to continue that trend, of course, kind of like a Wanderer week type thing, because I've gotten that newfound love for this format. But basically this is kind of a video that's geared towards players who are more familiar with New Frontiers, not as much with the Wanderer format, and especially like newer players who are just getting into the game, who don't really know a lot of the older cards from like Grimm and Alice Cluster. And that is what to expect in the Wanderer format, but specifically cards that aren't in New Frontiers. Joe and I were chatting, and we came up with a list of 10 cards that we think really exemplify some of those powerful effects you'll see in Wanderer. So without further ado, let's start things off. But before that, do want to mention that, of course, we have GP Providence coming up this coming weekend of May 12th. The whole Deepwood crew is going to be there, and actually I am not playing this tournament. I am officially commentating the tournament with our lovely Jeremy Franklin, DMO73, who was very kind enough to allow me to ruin the stream that he's put so much heart, love, and soul into making. So hope you guys will join us on his channel. He'll be live streaming it then. You'll come and see whatever the hell we're doing, and hopefully we'll get some really, really good matches in. So, I hope to see you all there. Jeremy, thank you again. And without further ado, let's get into the actual list. So first on the list we have Gretel. Gretel is, of course, a classic resonator that has seen play throughout the course of Force of Will's history. And the first thing, of course, is that she is in fact green. She's a wind resonator. And I know everybody is really loves wind as it is right now. Everybody knows that wind is extremely balanced, but Gretel for a long time was a powerful card, but not too powerful, just because wind was in balance with all the other attributes, excuse me. But nowadays, now that wind is just so powerful, having an extra tool in the form of Gretel is unbelievably strong. She's a fantastic curve machine for wind. If you play her on 2, you go up to 3 stones, and we know a certain thing that a lot of wind decks can do on 3. We'll get to that in a second. She doesn't require you to play only basic stones, like her sort of half-brother Soul, who was the 400/400 that flips over a basic light magic stone, puts it into play. Gretel does that for any wind magic stone. It doesn't have to be basic, so you can play like Spirit Stone, Black Silence, Gusting Skies, all the good dual stones. She's a fairy tale, which is awesome. If you happen to be playing the deck that I was playing yesterday with Mono Green Grimm, she was really good in that deck. She importantly leaves the will that you get off of her untapped, or recovered in Force Will terms. And that one recovered will actually can be really effective with some cheap cancels that we have access to in Wanderer format. So another big thing is that she's really flexible. She's good for tempo and control, which is awesome. And of course, she's fantastic at ramping into control, but also ramping into very important tempo pieces, which we'll see in a second, because we're going to focus on Scheherazade over on the left there. Scheherazade's probably the biggest abuser of Gretel at this point. Playing Gretel on 2 and not having it get cancelled means that on turn 3 you have access to your judgment, and if you're flipping your stories over once per turn, the way you should be if you're playing the tempo Scheherazade variant, you're going to be on turn 3 able to flip with Legend 5, and that is absolutely absurd. So definitely really powerful effects here. Also, Gretel allows you to leave will open to play your story chance on your opponent's turn. You can Approaching the Truth after Greteling on your opponent's turn too if you're going first. There's a whole avenue to open up with that, and Gretel opens up way too much for Scheherazade. Again, you guys saw the Grimm deck from yesterday. Green Grimm is fantastic just because of how many really aggressive fairy tales you can play in the green format, and Gretel just constantly adds to that. And then lastly, we're going to just focus on Vlad Tepes. I know that I mentioned that Control was a big abuser of Gretel. Vlad is the classic abuser just because the mono-green Vlad of old was a seriously insane deck. And having access to Gretel still in that deck means that Vlad can ramp up her stones and then just pay 2 as many times as she wants to drain your opponent out and win the game from there. So Gretel's definitely very high in the ranks in our book. Again, this is not in any particular order, but personally I see Gretel as like one of the best cards in the game right now. Moving on from there, we have Gwiber the White Dragon. A lot of PTSD from my old days of playing in Alice's World and Turbo Featsing formats. Gwiber was and is still an insane card. It's a 5 mana, 5 little 12/12 with flying, and you pay 2 less to play hit for each resonator that enters the board and is on the board for that turn. So Gwiber obviously becomes very, very cheap in swarm strategies. There's some very, very effective ones that we'll be getting to in a second. Flying is unreal for guaranteed damage, especially if you're getting him off on turn 1 or 2. That's a lot of damage to deal with that most people can't even block. He's got fairly good searchability as well. There are a lot of cards that end up searching out dragons in Wanderer. We got a new card in Advent of the Demon King that was Search for a Flyer. It's pretty good. And he also just fits pretty well into combos. If you're an overachiever and want to play out a combo deck, Severing Winds is banned from play in Wanderer, so you don't have to, focus on your opponent just having a free cancel for your combo. That is absolutely crazy, and Gwiber is free to roam as he pleases in a Severing Winds-less format. So the 2 decks, of course, the Gwiber fits into best are Elf Swarm, Favor being the one that can bring him out consistently on turn 1 with an opener of Spirit Caller Elf and the Gwiber in hand, while Featsing, on the other hand, is just like kind of the Regalia-based version of the deck. You play out a Regalia, you play out a Resonator, you get a Wind Elf token, and then you get to play the Gwiber after that. So a little slower than Favor, but probably a little more consistent and a little more explosive towards the late game. So pick and choose your battles. I personally prefer Favor, but to each his own. Some people prefer Featsing. I prefer Featsing for the art, but Favor's fine. So Gwiber definitely a very strong contender for these decks. Moving on, we have Space-Time Anomaly. This is a card that kind of falls by the wayside sometimes, but I think is probably one of the strongest removal options that we're going to see in this format. Again, it's very well statted removal, 2 will to give -5/-5 to a J Resonator. The versatility of being able to target J Resonators with this is fantastic. The attack drop is also fantastic. It's really good for setting up combos because, again, it's an instant speed card. It has a remnant, so after you play it once, you can save it for later, use it as an activator for a combo in the later game, and that replayability is just really, really strong. The card just kind of fits into strong control decks, well, control attributes being water and darkness, and with those attributes come very, very strong water and darkness control decks, which have been a staple in older formats in the past. This card is a huge contender for that. You also get the draw effect out of it too, which is really, really good if you're playing a slower, more grindy game, and you're just like, alright, running low on resources, let's just Anomaly something, kill it, and draw 2. That's pretty good for 4 will. And of course, because it has the attack dropping, it can be used for defense, which is always much appreciated when you're playing a control deck and getting your face beaten in by Cthugha's. So again, who can use this? We're completely missed to not mention Valentina in this, having the ability to cast the Space-Time Anomaly, have her ability to give something -2/-2 to a J Resonator, no, not to a J Resonator, -2/-2 to a Resonator, and then an added 500, -500 to a J Resonator. You can hit something for 7 for 2 will, which is unbelievable. You can make something attack you for 7 less than it would have, which is also incredibly strong. You can use it twice to kill 1,000 defense J-Ruler and also kill a 400 defense Resonator while you're doing it. The possibilities are completely endless with her. It's absolutely crazy. And of course on the side we have an example of a little more of like a slow roll deck that needs extra gas to get going. That's the Yggdrasil Malefic Verdant Tree. once your opponent just kind of doesn't want to play more against you because they don't want to mill your stuff out from the top of your deck, having Space-Time Anomaly just refill your hand and get more gas to play along is really, really strong. So both these rulers use it exceptionally well, and Space-Time is a consistency and power tool and removal tool, and probably just one of the most versatile removal spells we've ever seen in the game. Moving on to a much less versatile removal spell. Of course, it's always good to mention Black Moonbeam. Unchaseable J-Ruler removal is unbelievable. This card is incredibly strong, especially when we have so many J-Rulers to choose from, a lot of them with very powerful flip sides. Being able to just kill it for 2 will, instant speed. It's an Ancient Magic, which is awesome. There are a lot of cards that either search out Ancient Magics or let you play them for free, which we'll be getting to in a moment. It's really good, again, against more aggressive decks, aggressive J-Ruler based strategies. Only problems with the card is that it's a very linear design. You really don't have much option if your opponent doesn't flip and you have this sitting dead in your hand. This is a pretty often a card that you'll be siding out if you're trying to main one. If you notice that your opponent isn't trying to aggressively Judgment. And the only other option is that you have a massive weakness to Barrier with this thing. Something like the Green Gill, Little Red, the Fairy Tale Ruler. Having Barrier to black is really, really strong to deal with Black Moonbeam. So those are the only 2 options, but again, this card is insanely powerful, and unchaseable abilities in the past have been just phenomenally powerful. So again, who's going to use this mostly? We're going to pick up Scheherazade again because she can kind of work in Darkness Will, and having the ability to not only spin Resonators to the top of the deck and bottom of the deck with the dolls and herself, but then having added in Black Moonbeam to deal with the J-Rulers, which is the only problem that you really had in New Frontiers. You basically cover all your bases at that point. So Scheherazade is a totally fair game from there. And of course, we're completely missed not to mention Gil Hamad in this regard, because it is an Ancient Magic. Gil, once he gets 2 counters, can play Black Moonbeam for free at any time. And search it out, of course, with Rune of Soul, which is an insanely good card. There's a reason that Gil Hamad was the only answer to Persia back when Levitine was not banned. So keep him on the radar too because of that. Moving on next, we have Izanagi, Keeper of the Seal. This one is sort of a cheating on our part, because Spinning Myths is technically still in New Frontiers, but Izanagi is the thing that made Spinning Myths as absurdly disgusting as it was back in Alice Cluster format. Izanagi clearly, of course, is the 11/11 for 6, or off of the Spinning Myths for 3, that when he comes into play, you can remove up to 3 things from the game, Resonators and or Regalia. Eventually they'll go back to the hand if he's destroyed, that's fine. And he gains +3/+3 for each card in removed areas that were removed by that effect. So maximum he's a 2000/2000, essentially for 3 to 2 will, depending on if you torrented Spinning Myths, of course. So Izanagi is a quick, cheap removal card. He's a huge body when you start going into the later game. Being able to just remove things and keep a 2000/2000 is crazy strong. He's also really, really good for being an anti-Regalia option. If your opponent has a Death Scythe and you're trying to get a little more aggressive, you can put those Death Scythes on the removed area. They can't get them back until Izanagi's gone, and you're free to just go at the face. The only problem with him is that he's extremely reliant on myths. If you happen to draw pretty unluckily and you draw either 3 Izanagi or 3 Spinning Myths and neither of the other, and you're just sitting there with a bunch of dead cards in your hand, it feels terrible. But when the combo goes off, it goes off really hard, so definitely something to really watch out for. Actually, if I was to make a list of some of my least favorite mechanics in the game, Myths Izanagi would definitely be one of the top. Not a big fan, especially from when I used to play in Percy Myths format. So, what decks use Izanagi? Hey, look, it's your Scheherazade again. So, again, you see on the right the Spinning Myths card over there. Basically, any deck that can play Spinning Myths really wants to play Spinning Myths into Izanagi. Again, you just kind of need a more tempo-oriented green deck, and that's not too hard to play. It's hard to play Izanagi in control, but being able to tempo mat's good. Something very important to remember with Scheherazade is that if you don't open with the Gretel and you're going first, on turn 3 you can't actually Judgment. So having a way to, on turn at the beginning of your turn 3, with the 2 remaining will, you can tap to play an Eva. So the Eva gets played, you go to untap, tap for your 3rd stone, get the 3rd stone, tap 3 for spinning myths. Because you played the Eva earlier in the turn, you get the torrent ability to get another magic stone. So now you've played a 10/10 Eva essentially, 20/20 Izanagi if your opponent has 3 things that were removed, and you've netted a stone that you can use for 1 will cancels. I threw up a little bit thinking about it. It's that gross. So, Izanagi is definitely one of the most powerful mid-range options for Scheherazade. Playing in the tempo variant, just having something to fill out the curve is really nice. I know a lot of people playing, like, what was it? Seraph and Arthur, which I think are also really good options and are good for the late game, but if you're looking for something to fill out your curve really well, Izanagi is second to none with spinning myths. So definitely keep an eye out for him. Moving on to number six, excuse me. Another huge bomb is Captain Hook the Pirate. This is the only card on this list, technically one of the 2 cards on this list, that is actually from sets that are currently in New Frontiers, but it's one of the cards that is banned from New Frontiers, and for very good reason. Captain Hook is a really, really strong Special Stone hate card. He comes into play, you put 2 Special Magic Stones on top of your opponent's main deck, not main deck, stone deck, that'd be weird if they were on the main deck. He's really good with ramp strategies, and there are a ton of those in Wanderer format. He's a 10/10 for 5, which isn't too bad, especially with a really, really powerful enter effect. Something huge is that he's a fairy tale, and we'll go into that in a second, because having that fairy tale tag means a lot in the Wanderer format. And lastly, of course, rest in peace, Fairy Tale. Captain Hook was the card that single-handedly got that card banned, which I'm not going to complain about. Fairy Tale is very poorly designed if you start making fairy tales with insane enters or insane stats like, I don't know, Skyscraper Giant. So, definitely not a miss of that. But Captain Hook is insanely powerful, especially in decks like Lumia and Grim. Lumia Hook is a fearsome combination that we've known for a long time. Having the ability to swing with the hook after setting your opponent back a turn, a Lumia effect triggers, you put it back into play. When it comes back into play, the enter effect goes off again, you put 2 more stones back, and your opponent's down 4 stones on like turn 4 or 5. That's crazy. And then, of course, Grim having the Fairy Tale synergy means that if you're ramping up with Gretel, as we saw with our number 1 pick, you can get to your Captain Hook turn really, really quickly. On turn 5, you'll drop him, set your opponent back. They'll probably be at like 3 stones at that point. Once you set them back like that, you go to your next turn, tap for your 6th stone, pay 1, discard a Fairy Tale, search out another Captain Hook, play the next Captain Hook, and keep it going from there. It's a huge chain of events that you can occur with Grim. Definitely a little more expensive than playing the Lumia deck, but a little bit easier to maintain, I think. So pick and choose with your battles, and Captain Hook is the correct choice for you if you're looking to blow your opponent out of the water. Alright, on to the next one. We have one of my least favorite cards in the game, but a card that needs to be talked about because it is very, very influential on the current format. Cthugha the Living Flame is a 3-will Cthulhu Resonator with swiftness and 500/500. You're never playing it for 3, almost, unless you're in a really pinch situation. Because you can banish a Fire Resonator instead of paying its cost. It itself is a Fire Resonator, and it synergizes insanely well with the card Rook Egg, which used to be part of the deadly Egg Guinevere combo before Guinevere got banned. You see it on there, rest in peace Guinevere. Cthugha is probably the best example of a replacement for Guinevere for the current Egg iterations, but it means that you're playing a very aggressive style deck if you're playing Egg. Cthugha, often enough, will probably swing for about 10 to 15 damage on your first turn, depending on your opener, which is absolutely gross. One of my least favorite things about the card. It's, again, early damage, and it's Grave Presence as well. You get to fill your grave with a couple of Cthughas. If you have synergy cards with them, such as a card like Pyrrhix Play Dead, or Book of Abon, which you'll never play because you're never going to pay 3 to bring this thing back. But you do have all that. With Minor Cthulhu synergy, it's not as relevant right now, but if you're looking to play Cthulhu Tribal, this is a no-brainer with the Egg combo, because you can search out all your Red Cthulhu Resonators, So, with all this being said, where are you going to see Cthugha most? In aggro, of course. So, currently the most popular version of the Cthugha build is the Keurig build, because you get access to so many battle arts, you get access to a great judgment side, easy removal, and just a really, really good resonator in Piggy as well, to give your Cthulhu's flying as you play them, swing in the air, sack it for another Cthugha, remove 2 counters, give it flying, swing in the air. There's a lot of unstoppable damage you can do with that full combo, and Keurig really sells that. And then outside of Keurig, any deck that can play Rook Egg should play Cthugha with it. The two go very hand in hand now that Gwiber is gone, so if you're thinking of playing a deck that runs aggressive red resonators and wants to, cycle the deck a little more, tutor a little bit, Egg Cthugha is an insane combo, so highly recommend that. Moving on for number 8, a card that isn't often talked about, but is one of the unsung heroes right now, Dream of Juliet, which is a 2-will instant that either destroys target addition, draws a card, or removes a resonator from the game, then puts it back into its owner's field. This card is really strong because it's reminiscent of a few cards, such as Lumia, and then just Edition Hate like Heavenly Gust, except it's more flexible. And it's got a lot of potential for value in it, especially with that remove return. It fits really well with a lot of light resonators too, stuff like Izanagi, Celestial Wing Seraph, and then stuff like Hook, stuff like, can't even think of anything right now because it's just so many things to think about. Again, Wanderer is so wide, there's so much you can do. Really, the sky is the limit with this card. The only issue I do say we have with it is the fact that it's constantly competing with Lumia for, the ability to flicker something and flicker it back in. Dream of Juliet is way more flexible, but unfortunately is 2 mana that you have to sink into it, which can be a problem if you're trying to play a little more aggressively, and if you're not ramped to the point where you should be. But either way, card's insanely strong. Thinking about stuff that really fits well with it, I was trying to think of a card that has a really good enter effect, and then another card that had a really good leaves the game effect. Rachel has both, so I decided to pick it. Having cards like Rachel where you get a lot of value off of the flicker is fantastic. Lumia Rachel was a feared combo when it was first thought of, but ended up being a little slower than Scheherazade. That's fine. But also Scheherazade can use that effect really well with a lot of her doll's enter effects. Evil Ginny being one of the crazy strong cards out of the Scheherazade deck, to many people's surprise. At Legend 5 you get 3 enter effects that each have a decent amount of significance. Once you Dreams of Juliet that, it comes right back in, you do it all over again. Your opponent has banished 2 resonators, discard 2 cards, they lose 800 life, it's a lot of power built into it. So Dreams of Juliet is very powerful in that regard. We also have, for number 9, Lapis' Dark Storm. This is a card that isn't talked about right now and isn't seeing too much play due to the fact that a lot of the decks that are in contention are a little more tempo-oriented than control, but this is an absolute staple in really heavy hand destruction control decks. Synergizing it with stuff like Thought Control, Scorn of Dark Alice, Nameless Mist, and then having effects that remove the grave, like Dark Alice, which we'll see on the next screen, unfortunately, and Evil Elemental Uprising means that Lapis' Dark Storm can become a really effective removal tool that can nip a lot of things in the bud before they start moving forward. The only problem with this card is that your opponent discards a card at random and then chooses to discard a card, so sometimes that can work in tandem with grave effects. We see a lot of cards that have very powerful grave synergy effects in Wanderer, but if that's the case, that's fine. Lapis' Darkstorm is still just a lot of value for its mana cost. So again, I mentioned Dark Alice before, who is the best thing for removing things from the grave. For 1 black, after you discard 2, you just start removing, and then you can Judgment and then get the value out of that. But also, Invading Demon of Water Valentina is really powerful, because once you Lapis' Dark Storm them, you can also start just dealing 200 damage to things. The champ-based debuffs are really strong with her, so that's some very apparent synergy. So keep an eye out for Lapis' Dark Storm. It's probably not the most widely used card, but it's a card that can definitely catch you off guard if you're not prepared for it. And then lastly, of course, the most powerful of all cards in the game is... Oh, jeez. Okay. Oh, hold on. Something's wrong here. Let me check. This is wrong. Alright. Let's try that again. There it is. Okay, cool. Number 10, of course, being a tie between the two 1-mana cancels that are incredibly powerful right now. Wall of Wind and Otherworld Dreams. Again, Otherworld Dreams being a card that was recently released, but was recently banned due to its combination with Severing Winds. This is banned in New Frontiers, but Severing is banned in Wanderer, so this is the card of choice. Both these cards are really, really powerful, cheap cancels, especially with how many mana ramping cards we have, how many mana producing resonators we have. These cards just constantly see play, constantly see just one open wind will means that your opponent might be shut out for a turn. There's really not much else to say about these cards. We've seen Gretel, we've seen how powerful green is, but the thing is definitely something to go over. These two differ in very specific ways. Wall of Wind is insanely strong in the early game, but as it goes on, the power level diminishes because your opponent will normally have more will to spend. Otherworld Dreams is good throughout the game, but can be a little bit riskier because if you stop one card with them and then have a better card to follow it up with it, Otherworld Dreams just netted you pretty much a loss, which is crazy to think about. So, both of them together, definitely strong cards. You can probably choose one or the other and then pair it up with something like Favor Spell, but aside from that, it's definitely worth talking about whether you're going to see it. If you can tell already, you're going to see it in green because green is the best color. Of course, Speaker of Eternal Night, Scheherazade is going to use it to make sure that she retains that early game tempo, that early game power, and stopping your opponent from playing until she gets that judgment. Sacred Elf is basically a 1-mana way to summon it, tap and cancel something. This is especially strong if your opponent is playing a deck that doesn't have Energize. If you don't have Energize, Wall of Wind is basically your death sentence. And of course we mentioned Gretel earlier. That's a no-brainer for how those two work together. Gretel gets you a stone, you hold the stone up, and then you can either wall or Otherworld Dreams away whatever your opponent's threatening you with. So that's pretty much it for the top 10, well, the 10 cards that we chose here. Do want to give a couple of shout-outs to some honorable mentions here. Cards that we think aren't as widely seen but can take people by surprise. We saw that with Celestial Wing Seraph. The recent Germany Wanderer GP saw a lot of the Scheherazade players playing the Celestial Wing Seraph. It's a really, really good late game card that provides a ton of value, especially if it sticks on board. Cheshire Cat the Grinning Remnant is obviously the absolute best card in blue, in pure blue. Base Time Anomaly probably gets a better, a little bit higher up in our listing because of its flexibility with control, but Cheshire Cat being at what it is, and just a very, very powerful 1-cost resonator that draws you 2 cards, sets up your top deck, and then allows you to block for essentially free because it can't be targeted, is really, really strong. President of the Lunar Lake is another cancel spell. It's a little bit more interesting just because it's kind of similar to Lorite, where it's when your opponent plays an automatic ability or something, you can cancel it. Prison is a little more restrictive, and it has to be an automatic ability that was played when the card was played in that turn, but you can flip it up from your chance standby and set it and forget it, and then when the time comes, you just flip it up, and it also destroys the Resonator, which is really, really good. So, definitely a good card to watch out for. Yamato no Orochi is the big baddie that everybody loves to forget, but whenever you forget about it, it'll come in and take you out. Yamato has not lost its step, especially with Kirik getting his God's Art to pull a dragon from the top of your deck. If you hit a Yamato for 1 will on a Judgmented Kirik, you are dealing a ton of damage. So do not sleep on Yamato. This thing is still as powerful as it ever was. Necromancy is still here. Rapid Growth is still here. Winds of Vitality is still a thing that you can use. So many ways to power it up and get those 8 attacks in for game. And last but not least, you can't talk about a format filled with aggro without mentioning the Queen of Aggro herself, Persia, Pursuit of Exploding Flame. 3 will, 7/4 with swiftness, target attack, first strike, the ability to gain flying, and the ability to deal 500 when she leaves the board. tons of stuff packed into one big package. Red and green are the absolute best colors for tempo right now, and absolute best colors for tempo, aggro. Kirik is constantly playing the red-green variants, so Priscilla is an absolute no-brainer. If you can fit her into your deck, please do. She's very powerful. And with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. I know this was kind of a haphazard video. This is just us kind of talking about what we think we're going to see. Tons of speculation based on our testing, tons of speculation based on what we've seen from Germany, of course, their Wanderer format, and yeah, let us know what you guys think. Let us know if we missed any cards that you think are just going to be massively threatening from older sets, because we want to know. We want to make sure everybody's informed going into this, because this is our first Wanderer GP, the first big event that we really have to showcase the new post-ban list Wanderer format, and I could not be more excited. Again, we'll be streaming it the whole time. If you can't make it to Providence, please watch the stream. I'm going to be there making fun of everybody's misplays and making sure that Jeremy has a miserable time. It's going to be great. He's going to love it. So with that being said, this has been Mike from Deepwood Force of Will. Thank you all for watching again. Take care and have a nice day, and we will see you this weekend.